So what questions do we have off of this homework? Or let's address your questions first.
Juicy.
Lovely.
That's nasty.
By the way, there is the systems question that we had.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. No one needs to know that.
I mean, the whole world can know it now. We got it on camera.
All they gotta do is hack
Yeah, I
that
don't
feed
mind.
and just send it to everybody.
Did you ever find that other page, Carolyn?
No, I didn't do it.
Okay.
This
Okay.
one?
Mhm.
Oh!
Okay. Sit down and let's get to work. What questions do you have? We should have some questions, I would assume. Number 12? Okay. So when you look at the word problem for number 12, Key Anthony, what's probably the most important mathematical idea or word that you see there? Just right within that first sentence. Average, right? So the average of his 3 test scores must be at least a 93. And so he already scored an 89 on the first test, a 94 on the second test. Do we know what he made on the third?
No.
No. So 89 plus 94 plus that third test, because it's an average, is dividing by 3. And he needs at least a 93 to earn an A in the class. Fun fact, apparently that is a thing in some places where you have to have a 93 to earn an A.
That's true.
One of my best friends grew up in a system where he had to have a 93 to earn an A.
Not even 90.
No, when I was in high school, it originally was a 91 for us, and then they lowered it to a 90, but his was still a 93. One thing I do want to point out, when you write an inequality like A, define your variables, right? This will help you contextually be able to explain the other stuff. So writing those variables helps a lot, or defining those variables. Does anyone need me to go over how I found this solution, S is greater than or equal to 96? We good? Okay, so I just use my inverses, simplify, things like that. So part B, I think, and C were things that were giving some of us trouble, or similar ones like that from the task. So really quickly, describing in words the quantities that would work in this situation. Make sure you go back to the task and go back to that definition of your variable to make sense out of it. So the score on his third test needs to be greater than or equal to 96 to do what? In order for him to guarantee an A, right? Any score between a 96 and 100 will yield an average of at least a 93. Now there's nothing about 100 within that inequality, so why did I say between 96 and 100? The highest possible score is 100, right? So we need to remember, again, the context of things, right? You need to score at least a 96, but you can't score over 100 unless there's bonus points and things like that. So any score between a 96 and 100 will yield an average of at least a 93. Okay. Set notation. Notice how I defined it within the element of the whole numbers, which what do we mean by whole numbers? Right, so whole numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way on up to positive infinity. You can also just do the integers, right? That's just negative and positive whole numbers. Basically, you just can't really have a decimal, typically. So technically an interval notation won't work, but we'll talk more about that in our small groups. Any questions about what I did for number 22? Because I'm going to go ahead and tell you, the homework you have tonight is for an accuracy check. You'll have number 13, I think, and 23 and 24. So are there any questions about how to solve these equations? Yes? What's the question, okay? How? Does anyone remember what I can do based on these two equations right away?
Yeah.
What?
No. Wait, I remember talking about it.
Well, let me ask you this. If I were to tell you y equals 5, what could this 5 be substituted in for? Y. Those two things are equal, right? Is there anything up there, any expressions that I could substitute in for x or for y?
5 and 2.
Is x equal to 5 and y equal to 2?
No.
Remember, I can only substitute this 5 in for y because they are equal.
So y is x and y. X equals y.
Does x just equal y? No, x equals what? Y minus 1. So what could that y minus 1 be substituted in for? The x. I would take some notes on that if you didn't know how to do it. The work is still up here. Literally, I substituted y minus 1 in for x. That's what I have right here. Right? This y minus 1 took the place of x. From there I just distributed. I simplified and solved that equation. It was just working all the way through down to here. The design behind this is more to help make sure that you know how to solve or practice solving some equations. Looking at those steps, writing those steps down. Are there any questions about what I did?
Why do you have the x and y
Over on the right.
separate?
Well, you'll notice this was they're different colors. Once I finally found that y was equal to 2, what could I substitute that 2 in for?
Y.
Y. So I came up here and I substituted that 2 in for y, right? X is equal to y minus 1. So I substituted 2 in for y to find out that x equals 1. Now I have a point. 1 comma 2. Any questions from there? You good? Hopefully some of you remember the name of this, at least when I say it, but the substitution method of solving a system of equations. Sound at least familiar?
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar?
I've been freezing all day.
I'm sorry.
No, don't. I'm sorry you feel that way.
I mean, I hate it for you. I feel comfortable.
I'm so
I'm a
glad you
little
feel that
toasty.
way. I'm
Miss
so glad.
Veronica's class was cold.
A little spicy in here. Okay.
A little spicy.
Alright, today's agenda, we're going to relaunch 4.5. This is going to be the last day that we work on it. So we do need to move somewhat quickly, efficiently, trying to understand how to write inequalities, write the set, interval notation, things like that. So we are using the properties of inequalities coupled with inverse operations to create the identity elements for the purposes of solving inequalities. What are these identity elements I'm referring to? Anybody?
Yeah.
No ideas? Those are variables.
We talked about it and it was on the mind and as soon as you said it, it was blank.
You should see them up here. Does anyone see the identity elements when I solved 22?
Yeah.
What do you see?
Inverse.
Is it the,
Inverses are
The-
different.
when you can't put the 0?
What's negative 5 plus 5? 0. Notice, what is 7y plus 0?
0.
Nope.
1.
Nope.
7y plus 0.
What'd you say it was?
7y.
7y. Okay, I thought you just said y. But 7y plus 0, did that change the identity of 7y? No. When I divide by 7 here, what's 1 times y? 1y, right? So that 1y is y. It doesn't change the identity of it. And so again, 0 and 1 are those identity elements. We're creating those through the inverses of addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. And whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other to maintain equality. And we really need to practice writing the solution set to inequalities in interval and set notations. So we'll continue working on that today. I believe we wrote the inequality for number 3 and we solved it on Tuesday, correct?
Thought we were
Wait.
another number.
We already did number 4,
Alright,
and then we came back to do number 3.
I don't think we solved it.
We did not solve it,
Why?
so we just had this.
No.
I was on number 4.
We solved it.
Yeah, we solved it.
We solved this one?
Wait, no, we didn't.
I don't think as a class we did.
Okay, so individually we did?
Yes.
Yes.
Wait, I'm on the spot.
Hold on. Do we all at least have this inequality written?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So this is number 3 on 4.5. So what do we do from here to solve it? Let's at least reestablish that. Multiply by 5? Okay. What's the purpose of multiplying by that 5?
Get it away. Turn it on.
Okay, so that is the inverse. That is going to create a 1, right? 5 divided by 5 is 1, right? So that's just going to be whatever that numerator is. Let's go ahead and add this up. 150, 237, 327. Plus that x needs to be less than or equal to 410. Final step to solve for x.
Minus the 327.
Okay. Brianna, when we subtract that 327, why are we subtracting by 327?
To get the x by itself,
Okay, so why does that get the x by itself though?
because it cancels out.
Okay, there's one more term that I need you to think about. What is it creating?
I don't remember.
Okay, well what's 327 minus 327?
0.
So that's what we want to remember is it's not just canceling out. That idea of canceling out can get us in trouble with later ideas of mathematics. It's the inverse, it is canceling out, but specifically here just creating that 0. And what is 0 plus x? Right. Was that 83 I think?
Yeah.
Now, 2 things I want to ask. We just subtracted, so there's a negative. Are we supposed to reverse the direction of that inequality?
No.
Yeah.
No, yes.
Yes, no, not sure?
Maybe
I
so.
thought it was only when you multiply or divide, when you flip it, reverse
Oh.
it.
So just anytime we multiply or divide?
By negative.
Yeah.
Only when we multiply or divide by a negative?
Yes.
Thumbs up if you agree with the statement that you only reverse the direction when multiplying or dividing by a negative.
Is it?
Oh.
Cool, just making sure we're all in the same boat.
It's a trick
I wanted y'all, it's not a trick question.
It's not.
If I ask that
It's
question, it's
kinda
gonna force you to think
confusing.
about it. But it's forcing you to think about it instead of just assuming, okay?
I assume.
That's what you did to me last time. when I
That's
was
what I do
lost.
all the time.
Wow.
If I don't force you to think about it, you're not gonna learn it as well. So describe in words the quantities that would work in this situation. So what would be the quantities in this context that would work?
6 pieces. Wait, no.
No, we're on the veggie burgers one.
Yes.
She has something completely.
83 or less.
83 or less what?
Veggie burger.
So we're only buying 83 veggie burgers or less?
Yes.
Yeah.
$83.
Oh, there's dollars involved.
Mm-hmm.
So what about the veggie burgers is 83 or less? Thank you, sir.
So,
Okay, the price, the dollars are priced for what?
A box of veggie burgers.
There we go. We need to be clear with the context, right? Maybe it doesn't say box. I thought it said box up here.
it doesn't.
It doesn't. I lied. We can just say, so the order,
That's what I'm assuming, because $78 for a veggie burgers.
well, it's gotta be at least more than one, yes. The order
Yeah.
of veggie burgers.
Veg.
Now, actually, now I'm thinking about it, we're saying it needs to be less than $83, but eventually if I get far enough less than 83, I'm gonna need to start getting into negatives. Is that possible?
More than, greater than 0.
So maybe we need to always consider the context as well. You can't just go off of, hey, it's gotta be less than 83. The order of veggie burgers needs to be less than 83, but more than 0. Or we could just say the order of veggie burgers needs to be between $0 and $83, right? So always considering those contexts. The reason that this is important is that's going to tell us a lot about how to write the interval and set notation. So I still have notes up there about interval notation. So what's the minimum value for this solution? $0. Should I put a bracket or a parenthesis, do you think there?
That's a bracket.
Bracket. Technically, she could pay 0. I don't know how in the world that would happen, but she
She doesn't
could.
have to buy anything.
That's a bracket.
Well, she's still buying the veggie burgers, so somehow she just
so
doesn't
free.
pay. She gets free veggie burgers, I guess.
Still,
She steals them.
Gee.
Don't recommend that, but yeah. So then what's the
Let's not
maximum
have
value that she
criminal
could spend?
she pulls out a Glock and says, "Give me
Whoa!
burgers."
She could, again, I don't recommend it. Guys, maximum, what is the maximum value? 83
With the bracket.
with the bracket, right? She can spend 83 and still be within the context.
I got you on the set.
Okay, what you got?
That poor veggie.
Oh. Curly bracket.
Okay, curly bracket.
I put V for burgers. And
Okay.
then when
Good.
Yes.
V, the element of the real, comma, B is less than or equal to 83.
Does anyone have, does everyone agree with this, or do we want to push on this at all based on what we said for B?
So I can spell bigger.
0 is equal to or less than.
Say it again, Alan.
0 is equal to. Yeah,
So 0 is what?
is equal to or less than B,
So less than or equal to B?
and then yeah.
So what do y'all think?
It's wrong. Mine's right.
Yours is right?
Yeah, definitely.
So which, so
Rude.
vote. Alright, raise your hand if you want to go with McKay's. Raise your hand if you want to go with Allen's. Dang.
That's,
We have 3 people who haven't voted. Braden, which one do you want to go with? Allen or McKay's?
I'm gonna have to go with Alan.
Okay, Caroline?
She's hard stern.
Brianna?
Can you stop?
I'm right.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If B is just less than or equal to 83, what kind of numbers will you eventually get into?
Negatives.
Could you eventually get into negatives?
That's a less than.
So raise your hand if you want to go with McKay's. Raise your hand if you want to go with Allen's. I already know Braden said, so we're evenly split.
Come on now. I mean, that's really highly, or less than likely possible chance you go to negatives.
But if you say that it's just less than or equal to 83, that does mean it goes into the negatives. Less than or equal to 83 just means you go here and you keep going.
Amen.
That eventually gets into negatives. Can she pay negative numbers of dollars for burgers?
No.
If they pay her
So
for
can
it,
she just go less than or equal to 83, or do we need to say it's stopping at 0? Hey McKay,
Mhm.
what would you put right here as the minimum value,
I just never saw that.
right? We cannot go below 0. Make sense?
Thought you were
Mhm.
right.
I was.
He was
Yeah, the
right on
interval
his own
notation,
knowledge.
perfect. All right.
Still right.
So 5 and 6, work within your small groups, write the inequalities, describe in words the quantities that would work in the situation, and then write your answer both in interval and set notation.
Lovely.